today on Mother Mayhem.
This boundary setting stuff is so hard for all of you because in the past, stating your preferences has really legitimately had intense, real, and true profound consequences. You have paid a lot for your preferences. Welcome back to Mother Mayhem, the podcast for daughters of narcissistic and emotionally limited mothers. I'm your host, Heather Gray, and today, daughters, I want to see if we can have a new kind of conversation around boundaries, because oftentimes the conversation about boundaries gets entirely too simplified. The self-help space really does like to turn these kinds of conversations into tiny little snackable messages, and people just love to say, you just ... or why don't you just ... When it's you in the middle of those moments, when you are feeling the pull to be the person you're supposed to be, to do the thing you're supposed to do, or say the thing you're supposed to say, nothing feels that simple. I'm thinking as I talk to all of you about my recent pause in publishing new episodes for the show. I needed to get a little bit more ahead. I made the decision when I had only 2 episodes in the can, which got me twitchy because I like to have 4. And then I sat down on that first Wednesday, which is my podcast writing day for those of you who aren't in the know. And I typed episode 137 into the title of the document and nothing else. I realized in that moment that I didn't want to, that I needed a break, a real, actual break. A lot goes into making this show. I have to navigate a lot of decisions, and I consider a lot when I'm working on the scripts and choosing the conversations we're going to have as a community or the stories I'm going to feature. And it's really important to me that I teach all of you well. So I do spend a lot of time on my own learning and my own researching so that I can be sure I'm getting all of the psychobabble right, but also so that I'm explaining it in a way that allows you all to take what I'm teaching you and turn it into new actions for your own life. And doing all of that takes a lot of energy. And on that particular Wednesday, I didn't have it. So I stopped. And instead, I took myself out for the day. I read a book. I had good coffee. I took pictures of spring flowers. And then I met up with a friend for lunch on a podcast Wednesday. And the world didn't end. It turns out I didn't die. That's a little bit about what this episode and this conversation I'm hoping to have with you today is about. Because it's one thing to take a break to protect the integrity of the show. Taking a break so I could sit on a patio with a friend and not rush to make up that supposed quote-unquote lost time, well, that's a whole other thing. Because with that decision, I found myself bumping into my own boundaries and my own preferences, choosing what was best for me, even if it might not be for anyone else. And, well, y'all know this one too. Once we enter that territory, y'all know what happens next, right? You can write the script with me. Here comes the guilt and the second guessing, and then it's the inner critic asking you what the big damn deal is. And then off to the races we go. It's that moment of knowing in your body, the moment of knowing I need a break, or this isn't right for me, or this doesn't feel good, and I need something to be different. And then the question becomes, do I listen? Do I give myself permission to stop, to pause, to choose differently? Or do I end up doing what I've always done, which is white knuckle and push through? You've heard me talk about this moment on the show a couple of times before. It's that moment when you notice or when you happen to get clear. It's the moment when you're able to name what you want and what you need. And today, I want to talk to you all about what happens right after that. Because these moments you're noticing, this is where your boundaries are. And we don't just want you noticing them. We want you taking action on them. And then that, of course, is where it's going to get hard. Because let's be honest here, in the moment, not setting the boundary actually is so much easier. We might disappoint ourselves or make things harder for ourselves. But of course, we're used to that. We've done that before. But disappointing other people, that is an entirely different ball of wax. Now, for the month of April, inside of Mayhem Daughters, the online community that we have, we tackled the conversation in both our discussion boards and forums, but also boundaries ended up being the focus for all of our Thursday evening live groups. And one of the members in one of our first meetings, she really said it best. And she shared something where she said, I know my boundaries, I'm aware of them, but then I just get so scared of loss. I fear that I'm going to lose the person and I freeze. Now, there may have been a dozen or so of us on that call, and a lot of us were thinking, girl, same. Me too. And here's what I shared with the group. That intense fear of loss, that didn't come from nowhere. Any of you living with that kind of reality, you're not making it up. You're afraid of loss because your experience has been exactly that. You speak up, you say please don't, and everything blows the hell up. So of course you're scared. Of course you are. I teach this shit for a living now, and you heard me at the start of the episode name how it still comes up for me, how even just taking a break on a random Wednesday had to become this whole entire thing that I had to talk myself down from. This boundary setting stuff is so hard for all of you because in the past, stating your preferences has really legitimately had intense, real, and true, profound consequences. You have paid a lot for your preferences. So, of course, you would prefer to talk yourself out of having any of them. Of course you would. In the moment, that does end up feeling like the easier path. Until, of course, it doesn't. Because y'all know this part too. A lifetime of not stating your preferences, of not speaking up or not asking for a need to be met, well, y'all know this. It ends up having a profound impact on you too. It doesn't always look dramatic and doesn't look like some big, obvious collapse of an entire system, but it does end up looking like saying yes when you mean no, or going along with things that don't feel particularly good and telling yourself it's not that big of a deal, or maybe you find yourself editing what you're saying in real time, yet either to soften the edges a little bit or reshape it or turn it into something that couldn't possibly upset anyone. What if I say it this way? Does this feel true for you? Not setting boundaries or speaking your preferences is like being in conversations where you're tracking the other person more than you're tracking yourself. You're watching their reactions. You're anticipating their mood. You're adjusting on the fly so that everything can stay okay. And then maybe everything does stay okay out there, but inside of you, internally, in your body, you're tense. You're second guessing. You're probably replaying that interaction over and over again, thinking of what you should have said, what you wish you'd said, what you could have said that would have been even more true. And over time, you just lose clarity about what even happened or what you want or what you think in the first place. Because if you're always overriding yourself in the moment, eventually you don't even check in with yourself. That's how self-abandonment starts to become a habit. It's right there in those little moments, in the smaller pockets of life. So many of you, when you think about setting a boundary, you go right to your mother's, right, what I call the graduate school level of boundary setting. That isn't actually where the work is, even though I know you imagine that is where it is. But at first, my friends, it's a little bit closer to home in your own life and in the ways you tend to just go along to get along. You become the easy one or the flexible one. You're the one who doesn't need that much until you do. And then it comes out sideways. You might notice it as resentment or feel it as a desire to just shut down because honestly, you guys, we know this, right? This shit can get so exhausting sometimes. You'll feel tired or maybe you'll find that the level of exhaustion doesn't even make sense for the situation at hand and doesn't really match things the way they are on the outside versus how they feel on the inside. And if we look at all of this from a different angle, you might find it more in a feeling, like in a moment of sitting with yourself and looking in the mirror and thinking, I don't actually feel like myself, or I don't feel like I know myself. And this right here is why I am talking to you about all of this. Because, yes, not setting the boundary very well might feel easier in the moment, but it's hardly ever actually easier. All it really does is spread out the cost over time. And this is why what was said in group that night was so important. Now, in group, admittedly, I offered the therapist answer. I talked to them about how, of course, the fear of losing someone was baked into their DNA because it was their lived experience, like you just heard me say at the start of the show. All of you daughters have spoken your preferences and have been skipped over, bullied, neglected, and abused in return. You have had your families turn on you, and you've had friends ghost on you, and you have found yourself alone after moments of stating what you needed or what you preferred. Those moments are real and they matter because they are what inform you in other moments. When you think about speaking up or speaking out, making a request or saying no, this is the stuff that comes up for you. Setting boundaries isn't hard because you're afraid of things. It's hard because of your past. You've been punished in the past for doing this. And so now suddenly you're expected to just believe you can show up as yourselves and nothing bad's going to happen. When we talk about boundaries, this is actually what we're up against. Managing that fear of something bad happening after we do so. And now I want to tell you what I didn't say in group that night, but I really wish I had. When that daughter raised her hand and said that she was afraid of losing people to boundaries and preferences, I wish I would have said this. Anyone who leaves because you stated what you want, need, or prefer isn't someone who actually wants to be in relationship with you. Anyone who decides that you are the weakest link because you're trying to stay true to who you are as you move through the world probably isn't someone you should be in relationship with. Because inside of a relationship, real people are going to act really and perfectly. I know I have. We are going to mess it up. We're going to bumble it all up. But people who care about you are going to care about your experience. They are going to want you to be comfortable. They're going to want to know when you're uncomfortable. And if there's something that they can do or shift inside themselves in order to stay in relationship with you, the people who matter are at least going to try. Your experience is going to matter to them. And we know this part too. This will not be everyone. And it is not going to be every situation. We know this. You were afraid in those moments of loss. And I am not here to tell you that you're not going to lose. I am here to tell you, though, that if you lose, it might not actually be that big of a loss. Because this right here, I think, is where it starts. You see the moment. You feel the gut punch. If I say what I really think or what I really want to say, I might lose. Sit in that moment for just a beat. I need you to, because the next thing we need you to do is this. Consider the person in front of you. Yes, it's true. In the past, you have been brutalized for existing. You've been turned on, questioned, mocked, dismissed. No argument from me on that one, not a single one. But the person in front of you right now, the person or the situation giving you pause, the one making you stop and think, do you think this person is someone who would leave? Is this person someone who has you walking on eggshells? Now, if this person was your mom, we already know the answer to that. Yes, this person has you walking on eggshells. Yes, she punishes you. But so many of you are in moments just like this one, and they're not with your mothers or anyone from childhood. And still in the moment, your nervous system is all kinds of flared up, and it's acting like this moment is that moment. Because, of course it is. That's what nervous systems do. And your nervous system, right, at this point, you can say it with me, has one job: to keep you safe. So anytime there's a moment when you might lose, it's going to fly that flag right up the pole and send out all the alarms because it thinks you might be unsafe. But your nervous system doesn't always react to the present. It uses the past to inform it. So you absolutely need to give yourself a moment of pause to say, I know I'm freaking out and I'm worried about loss right now. I know I am. But this situation, this moment, this person, is this someone I actually think will up and leave me or change their relationship with me because I've spoken a preference? And sisters, if the answer to that question is actually yes, then we are not actually in a conversation about boundary setting at all. We are in a whole different kind of conversation about why such a person is in your life at all. Sometimes that is the conversation you're ultimately going to need to have with yourself. But it's my hunch that more often than not, you are with safe people, people who are actually looking out for you, who want to work with you, and who want to know your preferences. And if you're doing that gut check and the person does not feel safe, then by all means, use caution. Go slow. Don't put yourselves out there. First and foremost, our 4 F's have our back: fight, flight, freeze, fawn. If we are truly with unsafe people like your moms or her monkeys, we do want you being careful and using caution and going slow because we need you to meet yourself where you're at and respect your process. But once you do that gut check and decide that this person may indeed be safe, then we can work with you on showing up more authentically and more truthfully. And yes, that is going to include showing up with your boundaries in place. So the first thing is going to be noticing the moment within yourself and getting curious about it, seeing what you're reacting to and asking yourself why instead of immediately trying to get it right. Because so much of the boundary setting conversation out there implies that the moment something happens, you're just going to know in your bones that it wasn't right, that it didn't feel good, that if you were only better at this, the most perfect words would just suddenly roll out of your mouth. And my friends, let me tell you, that is simply not true. Ask me how I know. Now, those of you who have been to my website probably have seen that I have a whole ebook out there. I call it Simple Scripts for Saying Hard Things. And let me just tell you, that whole book did not come out in one fell swoop. I worked on that for hours and hours. It was my pandemic project back in the day because I knew just how hard it is to find the right words in the right moments. But here's something we forget in those moments. We get more than one moment. We don't have to say the thing the exact second we think it or feel it. We are allowed to pause. We're allowed to stop and think. We are allowed to circle back. You can always circle back later and say, hey, I've been thinking about that thing from earlier. I actually want to say something about what happened yesterday. You didn't miss your chance. And we keep it real over here. We tell the truth on this show, right? So let's just also name this. Absolutely, sometimes you are going to fawn in the moment. Sometimes you will go along to get along and find your way through it. That's okay. All that really means is that your nervous system is doing what it knows how to do. What matters is what you do next, because you can always go back and take the do-over. And the truth is, most relationships and most situations are going to give you that opportunity, because there's this thing called patterns, and they exist for a reason. If something rubbed you the wrong way once, there's a good chance it's going to happen again. So you don't have to panic and get it right the first time. You can notice it, you can hold on to it, and you can make a quiet agreement with yourself. Next time, I'm going to say something. I want to walk you through what this looks like in the regular, ordinary time. As I was thinking about examples for this episode and how these kinds of things show up in my own life, I was reminded that I actually have a good number of boundaries when it comes to my phone and to access to me. I have do not disturb hours on my phone, so I'm not getting texts and notifications at all hours of the day, and so I'm not starting or ending my day on my phone. I also have my car on do not disturb when I'm driving, and when I'm making plans with new people, I've gotten in the habit of saying so ahead of time. I'll tell people like, "Hey, I know a lot of people are used to using their phones while driving, and it feels nice to be connected if someone ends up running late. I just need you to know that I'm really lousy at multitasking, and so I don't text or use talk to text when I'm driving." So a while back, I had a scheduled lunch with a new woman I had just kind of recently met, and I did mention this to her beforehand, and it was still admittedly a little weird when we connected. She had texted that she was running late, and when she arrived, she met me a little defensively and said, "Well, I did try to warn you," and I was a little uncomfortable myself, and I said, "Oh, I know, it's totally my thing. I consider it a natural consequence of my own boundary if I end up waiting because I don't text and drive." And in that moment, it felt as easy and as true as that. It felt over, it felt fine. And even telling you the story now, it still kind of feels real and true in my body. Now, fast forward, I meet up again with that same woman who's now become kind of a casual friend, and a few other women for brunch. On my way there, my phone ends up lighting up with notifications, and I'm ignoring them because I'm driving. When I park the car, I see all the messages. They hadn't been able to get into the brunch spot we had decided on, and then they ended up getting stuck because they couldn't reach me. And I apologized. I said I was sorry. That must have been super annoying. If there's ever a next time, I hope you'll feel comfortable just going with whatever works for you, and trust that I'll follow along if that works for me too. And I also acknowledge that it must have been frustrating to be trying to get in touch with someone and not be able to. When I look back on that and as I hear myself and tell you the story, it sounds like maybe I was even in that particular moment a little overly apologetic. I didn't really love apologizing for something that I had told them about ahead of time, but also I do kind of get why it would have been annoying. What happened next, though, was all kinds of awkward. I could feel that it wasn't over for them. I could feel like heading into the restaurant, there was this tension. I noticed side glances. Everybody seemed to kind of be pushing through, but it did not feel good. So I took a moment and I said again, "Hey, you guys, I'm really sorry for the bumpy start here. I didn't mean to create an imposition. Is there something I'm not aware of? Because it still feels tense." And I saw my friend put her hand on my hand almost to say stop and shook her head a little bit. That did not feel good, I can tell you. I don't like being shushed. And again, there were these side glances and there was no eye contact. And Then one of them said, "No, really, it's fine." And I promise you, you guys, it felt anything but fine. And it was in that moment that something landed in my body. Not this. Nope, not this. I do not choose to feel this way on a perfectly lovely Sunday. I excused myself to the restroom and, of surprise to no one, promptly burst into tears. Why is this always so hard for me? But also hard, no, full stop. My body did not want to go back to that table. My body did not want to sit there and play pretend. Everything is fine. Fake Real Housewives of Orange County? No fucking way. No, thank you. Not for me. I'd only ordered a coffee, so I went to the hostess stand and I said, "I'm at a table of mean girls, and I just need to leave. Can I pay for my coffee here?" And she gave me a knowing glance and said she would take it off the tab. Shout out to the women who support women. Went back to the table and said I needed to leave, that I wasn't comfortable and I was going to remove myself from the situation. I also told them it was okay to remove me from their contact lists, that I understood we moved through the world differently and that was okay with me. I accepted that about them and about myself, and I wished them well, and I left. Now, I almost didn't tell this story for this particular episode because we're talking about boundary setting and the regular everyday. But here's what's true about the regular everyday. In the regular everyday, you're going to say no to social plans because you have to work the next day or you're too tired, and most people are going to be fine. You're going to have a boundary about your phone and people aren't going to blink about it. You're going to decline making homemade cookies and show up with store-bought, and no one's going to care. You're going to lose sleep over saying no, and still you will find out it's going to be fine. And the only way you are ever going to learn that is by picking something you're willing to practice and then get about doing it. But what you're really afraid of in these moments is what happened to me, how it felt to be me, crying in that bathroom like I was in the 7th grade all over again. And here's what you really need to know. You don't die from it. It doesn't kill you. It doesn't break you. It doesn't wreck you. It doesn't feel good, but also it doesn't destroy you. It hurts, and also you will live to tell the tale. Because in that restaurant, I was so unbelievably uncomfortable and sad. But I wasn't unsafe. And that is the difference you need to start learning in your bodies. Being uncomfortable does not mean danger. Being uncomfortable doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It just means you're starting to get in touch with what works for you, what doesn't work with you, and you're finding your way with all of it. And it's not always going to feel good. And also, it won't always be the worst things. And here's what else I want you to know. If you were me in that moment and you're thinking to yourself, no way could I up and leave. No way. You know what? That would have also been true for you. And that could have worked. I didn't have to leave. I could have stayed. I walked myself through every possible option when I was in that bathroom stall, and I went with the one that felt the most real and true for me in that moment. But you might have stayed. You might have bitten the inside of your cheeks, willed yourself to get through it, and pushed through the brunch however you needed to. And that would have been a perfectly okay answer too. That is still a way of getting the hell out of Dodge. What wouldn't have been okay, though, and what I would never want for any of you, is to sit through that kind of mean girl, awkward behavior and then keep choosing those people. Because they showed me who they were, and I believe them. I didn't put the kibosh on the whole thing because they didn't like my boundary about the phone. I know that's an annoying thing about me. I have been told a lot of times about that. I put the kibosh on it because of how they made me feel, because of how they treated me like an other, because they wouldn't have the conversation with me about it. That told me everything I needed to know. And if you felt that same thing in your body in a situation like that, my hope for you would be that you don't keep going back. Maybe you say something after the fact. Maybe you send a text. Maybe it's an email. Maybe you just decline future plans. Maybe you ghost. But you get yourself out and you don't put yourself back into a situation with people who make you feel that way again, because that is actually what matters. So, what does regular, everyday boundary setting look like? And what does it sound like? It's simple and it's hard in equal measure. It's noticing what lands in your body and how it's landing. It's getting curious about it, checking in with yourself. And it's wondering, is this a thing from back then? Or is this something about right now? And then, my friends, it's listening to yourself and believing yourself and choosing the next action that respects the conversation you just had with yourself and the one that keeps you connected to yourself. That might look like saying something in the moment. It might look like circling back later. It might look like taking that do-over. And it might look like leaving. Or it could look like staying, but not knowing if you're coming back or knowing you're not coming back. There isn't one right way to do any of this, but there is the way that's right for you. And the next right answer is the one that doesn't make you leave your body in order to do it. The next right answer is the one where, even if you're uncomfortable, even if your voice happens to shake, even if you second guess it later, you stayed with yourself, because that is what we're all working toward together. Not being perfect, not getting the words perfectly exactly right, staying with yourselves over and over and over again. All of you are in this incredible community of women from around the world who are in this together. All of you are in this together. And I, for sure, most definitely am in it with you too. Bye for now. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope that you felt seen and heard in today's conversation. And I know conversations like this are not easy. If they were, everyone would be having them. And you all know this too. The work doesn't end here. The things we talk about, relational trauma, mother wounds, identity, and healing, well, they were never meant to be worked through alone. And that's why I've built an entire ecosystem of support around Mother Mayhem. And you can find it all at mayhemdaughters.com. Inside the Mayhem Daughters community, the conversation continues between episodes. It's not social media, it is something safer, deeper, and intentionally designed to support your healing. Community membership now includes Thursday Night Mayhem, our weekly live gathering from 3:30 to 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. Every week, I facilitate a focused conversation connected to our theme of becoming your own best friend. We practice regulation, we build boundaries, and we expand capacity. If you're looking for more than insight, if you're ready for practice and connection, that space is waiting for you. I also continue to offer Tuesday group at noon Pacific Standard Time, a separate weekly support group for daughters who want a more traditional small group experience. And if you're not ready to share in a group but want my eyes on your story, I offer one-on-one Mayhem consultations as well. You can learn more about all of it over at mayhemdaughters.com. If the show has helped you and you'd like to keep it ad-free, you can support it through the link on the website. And if you're already in group, in the community, or have worked with me one-on-one, you are already supporting the show. There's nothing more I'm asking of you. If you have a story or a reflection of your own, I'd really love to hear it. You can send a message or a voice note 10 minutes or less to heather@mayhemdaughters.com. There's no mayhem without your stories or your questions. If you know another woman who needs this conversation in her life, please share the show with her. Your reviews and shares truly matter. And lastly, a big ol' thank you to Heather Clark for editing the show. She has been in it with me since 2016, and somehow she always knows what I meant to say, even when I don't say it quite right. This isn't just a show, it's a community, and you're already a part of it. And I am so very glad you're here.